allegedly too big to fail. Somebody want to comment on that?
Well, the basic theme involved there is starts with perhaps reading a brief essay that Alan Greenspan wrote when he was 40 years old, when he was a Randian, called Golden Economic Freedom. The world went off the gold standard because of the rise of statism, the rise of the welfare warfare state. And the economists, unfortunately, were behind that. The trajectory of Greenspan's career is really the whole story. He caught Potomac fever at the age of 48, and he himself became a statist. It's great fun running the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve gives the economists a seat at the tables of power. They don't have to be just economists and journalists. They can actually call the shots. It's very heady. It's very invigorating. But beyond that, what is happening right now politically? The Obama administration, Obamonomics, is basically stealing the country from the American people, and it's doing it through the printing of money. Deficits don't matter. Of course, that's what Dick Cheney said, and Dick Cheney was a part of that same problem. Deficits don't matter. We can print the money. We don't have to ask the people to pay for it in taxes. We can simply print it, impose it on them, arrogate the resources to ourselves, and then we don't have to worry. That's the nature of why this is all about politics. And indeed, Alan Greenspan wrote about that very, very succinctly in Golden Economic Freedom. That's
John?
what it's all about.
Gene and I agree on many of the things that may happen in the next couple of years, which would mean vastly increased inflation, by traditional standards, and of course the devaluation of the dollar and other financial problems. That will trigger, I hope, a robust debate about the mistakes that got us here and how to get out of them. Part of that debate should include what my worthy opponents are proposing, but we also need another proposal. We need a proposal for people who are not going to buy that package, and we need a proposal for a slimmed-down, streamlined Fed along the New Zealand model, and other countries, by the way, have adopted it since then. And I'm not saying it's politically easy, but it's certainly more politically easy than what they're proposing, and it has worked.
Tom?
Okay, but if we want to talk here about what's right and what's wrong, what's the best outcome we can aim at, then it seems to me that this solution whereby we should have just a nicer Fed that isn't going to do as crazy things, I mean, this is like, should I have a door with a lock on it, or should I have a door that has a piece of paper that says this door is locked? I mean, why would I support that? But beyond that, it seems to me there is no moral or economic reason to have this money monopoly system. And I think people who favor a system like this, that, as I showed in my remarks, actually does harm people, and I actually believe causes far, far worse financial problems than any other system. I think we need to, it shouldn't be the people who favor a free market who have to be on the defensive. It should be people who support this monopoly system. Now, F.A. Hayek, who won the Nobel Prize in 1974, in the late 70s began to argue that there is no reason, if you want to be a non-utopian, to believe, to expect governments to give you good money, especially governments with the ambitions of the United States. You have no reason other than mere superstition to believe this. And he says, historically, it is mere accident that governments have been in charge of the money monopoly. And why do you think that is? Because they're just looking out for the common good. They just want to give us a good medium of exchange we can use for our transactions. Of course not, because they want to be close to the source of the production of money. It seems to me if we believe in the free market, then all this Rube Goldberg nonsense about special drawing rights is utterly superfluous. What is to prevent the free market from producing money the same way it produces any other good? Money is a good. What's the problem here?
Warren?
There is no problem with market-provided money, and most of the money that any of us use is privately produced in the private sector. What the government has a monopoly on, and what a monopoly is needed for, or at least highly helpful, is the unit of account. All of the private monies, your Visa credit card and debit card and mobile phone payments, which are very popular in Kenya and other African countries, all kinds of ways of paying things, not just the old-fashioned check, which is also privately produced by banks, all have their value denominated in a monopoly unit of account, the US dollar. We cannot easily give that up. You mentioned too big to fail and a list of 500 banks. That's a fiction. There is no list of banks that are too big to fail, and it's certainly nothing like 500. But I think giving the Fed, I very much agree with John's points, giving the Fed added powers to deal with systemically important too big to fail institutions would be a very big mistake. We certainly need more transparency and information about what non-bank financial institutions are actually doing. The AIG debacle was a big surprise to everyone, but I favor, as John does, stripping the Fed of its supervisory powers, sharply narrowing its focus on monetary policy, preserving the value and integrity of that unit of account. And again, virtually all money is privately produced, so let's not raise fictions here.
Let me pose
May I just speak to Warren's point about the unit of account? Look, Warren, a brief economics lesson. The market prefers a single unit of account. There are very, very powerful market forces that produce it. In fact, its government, with its many currencies, the yen, the shekel, the dollar, the Canuck, all of those various competing units of account are bad for the economic system. And indeed, world traders only use one unit of account because those are market forces. They tend to use whatever's at hand. They tend to use the dollar. So indeed, I only suggest to you that you go on my colleague's reading list and try to understand that the single unit of account is the one thing that happens when a gold standard happens. Everybody wants gold. The world wants gold. There would be a single unit of account globally.
Just one tiny, I promise, two-sentence point. Also, I think it's misleading to say that, the money is all privately produced. This is like a great private system. Yes, with a gigantic monopoly privilege of legal tender. So, of course, obviously, people are going to accept this. The type of system we have now of fiat paper money being that is convertible into nothing has never in history emerged spontaneously as the result of people rationally observing the good consequences it has. To the contrary, it has always been imposed by violence and through monopoly force and through the police prohibiting alternatives. So why don't we let people, instead of using other things, let them use gold and silver and take the privileges off of the dollar?
I'd like to pose a
quickie. There's no prohibition on gold or silver. Anyone can own it. You can transact in it to your heart's content. But the market has revealed its preference not to make gold the center of the system. I'm not trying to say something against gold. I'm just talking about the market's revealed preference, which is for the U.S. dollar, not for gold.
I'd
What
like
if we
to
had
pose
them all on a level playing field for a change, and people could make voluntary choices, and they could actually make contracts, and they could require payment in something other than the dollar. That's the problem. The reason we can't have genuine competing currencies is that everyone's required by law that they've got to accept the crummy greenback.
Not true.
It's not true.
Well, I have to add in that one of the other things that President Reagan said to me was that he believed that individuals should make their own contracts in gold if they want to protect themselves. And he acknowledged that there was no country that ever survived when they dropped the metallic backing, although he stopped short of saying that we needed to go back on a gold standard.
And people make such contracts today.
Right.
But it's got to be, look, guys, the simple confusion is it's got to be two kinds. You and I can contract in onions if we want to. We can contract in apples. But there are legal tender laws that require, if there's a contract that's going to hold up in the courts, it's got to be paid in legal tender. Therefore, only if two parties to the contract agree to it can it survive. That's why it's not a level playing field, the legal tender laws. It's a simple enough point.
And the taxes on gold and silver, too.
Yeah, that's right. All right. We're running out of time. I'd like to pose one very practical question. We've been talking about theory, but what has happened is that the entire global financial